When the man who founded Zen or Chan Buddhism arrived at the Shaolin Temple, he didn't enter it. Instead, he went behind it, to a cave. And he sat, staring at a wall, for 9 years. One of the men who had accompanied him, Shengguan, guarded the cave, making sure that no wild animals or any people who had been looking to kill him would attack. For 9 years, Shengguan stood there, protecting the Bodhidharma as the Bodhidharma meditated and said nothing. Shengguan was desperate for him to learn some aspect of Buddhism, some aspect of the truth. Bodhidharma said nothing. Finally, on a snowy day, out of desperation, Shengguan screamed, "And when are you going to teach me?" Bodhidharma looked up from the wall and said, "When it snows red." Shengguan cut off his own hand, spun it above his head, until frozen flakes of blood landed on them. Shengguan collapsed, and Dámó, the Bodhidharma, took him in his arms. And what follows is the first koan of Zen Buddhism. Shengguan said to the Bodhidharma, "My mind is not at peace. Pacify my mind." The Bodhidharma said, "Search for your mind. Find your mind. Bring it to me." Shengguan responded, "I have searched for my mind, and I cannot find it." Dámó responded, "Then I have pacified your mind." In reverence and honor of Shengguan, who took the name Hoke and became the second patriarch of Zen Buddhism, we at the Shaolin Temple to this day still greet each other with only one hand. When we greet each other and say, "Amitofo." But tonight we're not going to talk about Hoke. We're going to talk about the first patriarch, the Bodhidharma, the man whose philosophy has radically changed modern art, science, literature, and continues to make waves. Tonight, Dámó, the Bodhidharma. So another story about the Bodhidharma, before we get into any kind of history or concrete aspects of the philosophy, relates to what happens after the story you heard at the beginning of the show. What it is there is a drought in the region of Henan where the Shaolin Temple is located, and they need to dig wells. So the Bodhidharma sent Hulke onto a hill behind the temple, and he had him spend what would have been roughly a year digging it. When the well was finally dug, the water was sour. It was not really drinkable, but it was good for crop raising. So Hulke was told to dig a second well. It took him another year, and he's doing this all apparently by himself, according to the story. When the second well is dug, the water is minerally spicy, as it translates. Again, not really good for human consumption. Good enough, but not really good. But excellent for animals. Finally, they dug a third well, another year. And that water was sweet. Now, interior to the Chan tradition, we interpret that as saying that every aspect of your life is necessary and comes pain, pleasure, what is sour, what is sweet, what is spicy. We need all of these things. They're all just part of the cycle. You can't deny that. That's also why we say flatten your heart, which is also comes directly from the Bodhidharma. All these stories sound very bleak and they sound very strange, and there's a variety of reasons for that. A lot of this is metaphor, but there's another reason behind it, and that's the tradition that the Bodhidharma came from had a belief that knowledge can only accurately be transmitted mind to mind, heart to heart, directly. This was the tradition of Dámó Buddhism that came from India, and it's the tradition of meditation. And it continued for 28 generations in India. And thus the Bodhidharma Dámó is the 28th patriarch of that tradition. And that tradition continued for another 6 generations of, again, nothing being written down. Now, remember, the monks, particularly in the period before Mahan Buddhism, when it's still the original monastic traditions, right? Monks had a variety of jobs. Like in Christianity, you would, there's very little mendicant begging tradition in China. Let's be clear. So the monasteries performed medical services, tax services, like, writing things down for people, that kind of thing. So things were written down, but the stuff that was written down in the Shaolin Temple that comes from Dámó isn't actually these Buddhist texts because of this mind-to-mind, heart-to-heart transmission tradition. What it is it's Chinese medicine and Kung Fu. Because apparently, and clearly, he was fascinated by it. And in fact, the largest contribution to Buddhism that the Bodhidharma really achieves is its synthesis with Taoism, which was not an obvious thing. Here's this monk who had been raised interior to a tradition which had been going on at that point for 1,000 years. And he comes to a whole other country, a whole completely alien. And again, this is we're talking at this point, it's roughly sometime between 450 and 530 AD. So there's no rough guide. There's no traveler's guide. There's no dictionaries. This is a man who knows absolutely nothing except from the world he's come from. And he finds himself in one of the poorest, blightest place in northern China. And as opposed to just, like most people do, impose their own beliefs on other people, he not only finds out about what's going on, which is the cutting edge of technology at the time, what's going on in Chinese classical medicine, what's going on in martial arts, and he synthesizes what he's taken from India. So the actual things that are attributed to him, the I Ching, which is a Qigong form, which is distinctly yogic. Like when you do the I Ching, it doesn't really, because if you do a lot of Chinese Qigong, and through the years, if you're into martial arts, you will do it, right? And it's very round, the I Ching is not like that at all. It feels like yoga. But it's not just that he would merge Chinese exercises like that with Indian practice. He brings into the Shaolin Temple the 5 animal Qigong forms, which had been around in China already at that point for several hundred years, and records them, has them formalized. And then he formalizes the 5 animal fighting forms. He doesn't invent this stuff. It's all floating around, but he formalizes, he sets it in, and this is all recorded. So we do have a good idea of what this guy was about, even if he didn't actually say anything. Well, he did say a lot, but, again, from what you see from the kinds of things he would say, they're not really direct. And there's a reason for that, too. And it comes down to a tendency in Mahayana Buddhism in general, which is to distinguish between determinative cognitions and indeterminative cognitions. Determinative cognitions are anything you can write down or be recorded or quote. It's language. Today it would be some aspects of film, even in music. It's a point when there's been a conclusion, there's been a closing of some sort. And we need to have determinative cognitions because we need to make determinations. But determinative cognition for Buddhism is distortive. It tends to break things down to a binary opposition. Dualism is inherent in this. And the Bodhidharma particularly is an anti-dualist. There is a trust in Chan Buddhism, but also in Buddhism in general, in this sense of an indeterminate cognition. That's the reason for the martial arts. That's the reason for the yogic practices. That's the reason for the breathing techniques. The idea is that you are amplifying, strengthening your indeterminate cognitions so that when you make a determinate cognition, it's not horribly distortive. And the process by which you purify these indeterminate cognitions is meditation. And this goes back to what it is that's going on in Zen, Chan, and Dhyana Buddhism before this. It's this idea that only through meditation can you at all see the world as it really is. That's not to say that what you say when you come out of meditation is the truth. It's to say that the only way you could even see the truth is to stop talking, to stop thinking for a moment, and actually look at the world and try to see it more as it really is. This is the reason why you'll find mystics sounding like mystics when they're not really trying to be mystical. They're just trying to speak in a way that's accurate, that doesn't collapse things into these dualistic oppositions. Man, woman, good, evil, up, down, right, wrong. We understand oppositions very well. But a lot of that high sense of understanding is just distortion. For this reason, for the Bodhidharma, for Dámó, and for Shaolin monks, and really throughout Zen, the goal is to make every single aspect of your life meditation. Every motion, every breath, every tear, every gesture, everything is meditation. Everything's to be executed with sacredness and absolute seriousness, no matter how small or how absolutely huge the task is. It is all interior to an act of trying to see the world the right way. And this isn't just doing kung fu. This is also the tea ceremony in Japan, which is an essential practice for so many people. And Zen in the art of archery, or if you want to be a hippie about it, Zen in the art of motorcycle maintenance. Anything can become meditation. And that is the path to enlightenment that the Bodhidharma Dámó is all about. There's no idea in the Bodhidharma that heaven is tomorrow, that enlightenment is tomorrow, that you'll be reborn somehow in a better place. And that time, in the future, one day, then you can make it. No. It's much bleaker than that. You're in heaven already. And it's this way because of the way you treat other people and the way other people treat each other. Exterior to the tradition, and other Buddhist traditions, there's a great story that hell is a feast where you're buried up to your waist. And there's a magnificent banquet in front of you, but you only have 10-foot chopsticks. So you can't actually get the food into your mouth. Heaven is where you feed the people on the table across from you. It's the same world. You can't get away from it. And yes, I mean, these ideas are in the West. They're absolutely, they're, for example, Ecclesiastes. It's all over there. It's all over Ecclesiastes. And that's also that way of looking at the world where I can say that is also part of the Bodhidharma's contribution. Bodhidharma is like, don't just look at one tradition. Don't just look at one thing. Look at as many things as you possibly can and learn throughout every point in your life. And this is a man who really lived this in every way. And so let's get into who this guy really was as the history we can best put it. I'm not going to put a lot of dates in. I mean, look, you know, you'll find on YouTube a lot of really good videos taking a variety of positions on Dámó, on the Bodhidharma. You'll find them, and some of them will be kind of academic and some will be kind of religious. And so you can get the dates from somebody else. For me, I think just sort of what it means to be someone who is a devotee, how they would see it. So you get a better idea of what all this stuff's about. So Bodhidharma was born somewhere around the area of Nepal, Tibet, India, Himalayas. He was the third son of some king in the region. This king had the 27th patriarch of Zen Buddhism come to educate his children. The Bodhidharma was the one that showed any interest. There was a test that this 27th patriarch gave where he put jewels in front of the boys. And the Bodhidharma pushed the jewels aside and said, "These jewels mean nothing to me compared to the jewels of enlightenment." Again, I think this is all kind of apocryphal. I do think, though, he was the son of a king. And when the king died, I do believe he went into a grieving that went, according to the myths, again, it's something like 6 weeks. After the death of his father, the man who became the Bodhidharma renounced the throne and followed the 27th patriarch. The next story is that he went about the process of going about all the different sects of Buddhism that are in the area and castigating them for becoming ossified, becoming still, becoming too formal, and sticking to the words of things rather than to the meanings of them, trying to, and that Buddhism was becoming dead. After this, he has a huge fight with the local king, who's probably his nephew. And to protect the Sangha, to protect Buddhism, flees India. He travels for 3 years until he finally reaches southern China. When he arrives, there's a lot of interest. Word had come before him that he was coming, that an important Buddhist scholar was arriving. And at the time, the Ling Emperor, the kingdom, was using Buddhism as a political tool to unify it. So there's great expectations about the Bodhisattva's arrival. So when he got there, he sat down and would do massive silent meditation sessions and not tell anyone anything. This irritated most people and intrigued the emperor. So the emperor sat Bodhidharma down and talked with him. So Dámó sits with Emperor Wu, and the emperor brags about all the temples he's built, all the monks he supported, all the texts he's had translated. He's even had the death penalty abolished. And he goes to Dámó, "What merit will this get me?" And Dámó goes, "Absolutely none." And the emperor was taken aback. He's like, "Well, why?" He goes, "Because these things are the defilement of karma. They are just shadows following forms." And the emperor goes, "Well, what does get merit? pure wisdom gets merit, Dámó responded. And these are spiritual things. They can't be pursued through worldly means. And the emperor goes, then what about the Four Noble Truths? What are they? They are vast, empty, and nothing holy. Then who is it that sits before me? Said the emperor. Dámó said, it is uncertain. The emperor didn't come to understanding. And so Dámó, realizing the situation not being fortuitous, fled and go to northern China, where they were killing Buddhists. Because southern China had gone about the process of using Buddhism as a political tool to unify the country, northern China had gone completely anti-Buddhist. Yet the Bodhidharma went there and started a whole religion from that point on. The main philosophical drive of the Bodhidharma, of his philosophy, is a concept that is central to Mahayana Buddhism, and that's Buddha nature. Buddhists, from the beginning, don't believe in a soul. They don't believe in an essential self. They don't believe in an essential anything. We believe there's something called emptiness. Now, emptiness doesn't, it's literally, it's called sunyaya. And this is not empty like a glass is empty, but it means empty of essential meaning or form. That means anything can go or be related to anything else, and in a sense is related to anything else. Beneath this system of transformations, where everything just sort of becomes everything else, this thing we call in the West becoming, a characteristic of becoming is beautiful. It is joyous. It is powerful. This is what we call Buddha nature. There's no real vision of free will in Buddhism, for example. There's no reason for it. You don't create actions. The actions create you. There is will. There's will in the universe. There's will. A plant strives for the light. An animal strives for food. Things strive to be. They strive to become. They strive to be real. That is also part of Buddha nature. And it is this creative force that you try to align yourself to. So, for example, an artist, they don't put a line or they don't chip something out of a stone because they want to. It's because that's the piece that has to go. Michelangelo used to describe doing sculpture as cutting away the extra marble. You know, you don't choose where the note in the stone goes. You put it where it's supposed to go. And where everything is where it's supposed to be, it moves. And that's Buddha nature. Buddha nature is groove. It is ebullient. It is joyous. And it is beneath everything in becoming. So there is no belief in anything essential. There is joy in what is real. I guess I want to get down to this. I just want to talk about this because we're coming to a point where people are going to be upset, they're going to be disappointed, they're going to be angry, they're not going to see any way forward. And they're not going to realize that this is part of what it is. You know, it's not about winning. It's not about losing. It's not about saying the right thing. It's not about saying the wrong thing. It's about saying something. It's about acting, taking action when it needs to be taken, and listening when you need to listen, and learning. From one refugee kicked out of two nations We have a spiritual tradition and a philosophical tradition which continues with us to this day and unifies people in China, Korea, Japan, Vietnam, the United States, all over the world. And it started from the worst conditions you could ever imagine. That's the value. That's the message.